Across various indigenous spirituality, not just limited to Igbo spirituality, Yoruba spirituality, but across indigenous spirituality that can be found across the globe or across Africa, we have this practice of removing our shoes and our footwears before entering into sacred shrines or sacred space or place of worship or veneration. Now, for today's topic, I'm going to discuss the significance of removing our shoes while entering an ancestral shrine. This is because the act of removing one's shoe before entering a sacred space or a shrine is symbolic, or it symbolizes respect, humility, and cleanliness. Now, bringing it down to the Igbo people of southern Nigeria, this tradition holds a deep-rooted spiritual and cultural significance, especially when we're visiting these ancestral shrines. Now, these shrines are known as Okwalose, Ogunmo, Ihunmo, and they are seen as dedicated space of worship to our ancestors and deities. Therefore, the act of removing our shoes whilst entering these spaces, it is not just a customary gesture, but it is out of our deep-rooted, profound cultural beliefs in our spiritual principles. Now, before we get into explaining the significance of removing our shoes while entering the shrine, we could first of all look at the significance or the spiritual significance of an ancestral shrine. Now, ancestral shrines within the Igbo cosmological system is considered as sacred because we believe these places to be the dwelling places of our ancestors and deities. These sites are seen as points of connection between the physical and the spiritual. It is a place where we communicate with the spirits of our ancestors. It is a place where we seek for their guidance. It is a place where we seek for their blessing. And it's also a place where we seek for their protection. Now, these shrines are carefully maintained because they contain symbolic objects of worship, artifacts, and offerings that hold deep spiritual values to us as Ndigo. Now, what this means here is that when you get into these shrines, because these shrines, they date back to so many centuries, you could see artifacts, equipment, items that were used by several of our ancestors even before our own reincarnation or incarnation. So these places, they hold deep spiritual value and deep historical values because they sometimes tell stories of our heritage, of our history, and our spiritual attachments to various cosmic forces. Now, what is the symbolism or the symbolic significance of removing one's shoe before entering an ancestral shrine? Now, the first one here is purification and cleanliness. In many religion and cultural traditions, including our own as Igbo people, our shoes are seen as carriers, or shoes are seen as carriers of dirt and impurities. Therefore, by removing the shoe before entering a sacred space is seen as an act of purification. It signifies the visitor's intent to approach the sacred area with a clean heart and a clean mind that is free from impurities from the outside world. It is also the acknowledgement of the sanctity of the shrine and the need to maintain its spiritual cleanliness. Now, physically, we see us removing the shoes. Before you enter into a shrine, you would remove your shoe. But at the same time, you will also see yourself using an alligator paper to clean up your spiritual aura, your spiritual energy from these impurities and from this dirt. So while we are manifesting the spiritual aspect or the spiritual function of the alligator pepper, we are magnifying it, or we are manifesting it by physically pulling off our footwears and exchanging and walking barefooted to signify that we have removed the dirt and the impurities that we are bringing in from the outside world into this sacred space or into the sacred shrine. The same goes to when we use the alligator pepper to perform some forms of absolution or cleansing of our aura. The second significance is humility and respect. By removing one shoe, it also shows a gesture of humility and respect. In Igbo culture, approaching an ancestral shrine is not just a casual act, but a solemn act that requires reverence. The shrine is a place where the presence of the ancestors and deities are honored. And by removing these shoes, visitors demonstrate their respect for these spiritual entities. It is also an acknowledgement of the shrine's sacredness and the superior status of the spirit worshipped within that shrine. The next one is connection to Ajani, the earth. Within the Igbo cultural worldview, there is an emphasis of our connection to the land, Ajani, to the earth. Now, it is considered a spiritual embodiment of morality. It is considered an embodiment of morality. So when you remove your shoe, you're declaring your purity of heart and body. You're declaring that you did not kill anybody, that your hands are clean and your mind is also clean. You're also declaring to Annie that you have maintained her moralities, her unso, and therefore by removing your shoe, this is a public declaration to that fact. Now, also, by removing one's shoes, individuals are directly connecting to the earth, Ajani, now symbolizing a return to one's roots and a humble acknowledgement of their place within the natural order. This act can be seen as a way to honor Ajani, the Mother Earth, and to show respect to her presence in her sacred space. This is to tell you that every ancestral shrine is interconnected with one another. It is interconnected with one another, and what preserves its sacredness is our commitment to upholding and respecting and honoring the entirety of principles that are connected to the shrine and to ourselves by extension. And the fourth significance is leaving worldly concerns behind. By entering into an ancestral shrine, it is an act of stepping into a different realm, one that is spiritual and remote from the mundane concerns of our daily lives. Therefore, by removing our shoes, we are symbolically leaving the material and the worldly concerns that our shoes represent. It is also an act of mindfulness and allowing the visitors to fully engage with the spiritual practices and rituals that are taking place within the shrine. Now, once you get into a shrine, you will see that they are performing so many rituals. Maybe if it is an Okwalosi that is dedicated to a community or to a lineage, you will see people trooping in and out, all of them carrying their own items of sacrifice. And at each given turn, and once they are saying the venerations you call for the affirmations, even the people seated are all joining and tapping into the affirmations that is being made by the priest. This is the when they say that the visitors are fully engaged with the spiritual practice and rituals that are going on within the shrine. It means that everybody is participating, everybody is getting involved, and everybody is receiving one form of blessing or intervention by the forces that are guiding the ancestral. It is interesting to note that this practice of removing one's shoes is a practice that is as ancient. That is as ancient as, should I even just say, the beginning of the Igbo history or the Igbo awareness. But even with our modern infrastructures and modern orientations and socializations, we have continued this practice because we have embedded it in our spiritual principles and we have preserved it. So we could say that another symbolism or symbolic significance of this practice is cultural continuity and preservations of culture. We've preserved our culture by continuing this practice of removing these shoes because of the significance, its symbolic or spiritual symbolisms to us. And finally, the act of removing shoes before entering an ancestral Igbo shrine is a practice that is rich in symbolism and meaning. For some people, it's just a mere act, they are just doing it. But for people that understand its deep-rooted meaning, it is symbolic and it is meaningful to us as Ndibo. It also reflects our respect for the sacred. It reflects our respect for our ancestors, for their cultural principles, their norms, for the things they left behind. It is a respect for our cultural norms, and it's also an acknowledgement of spiritual journey and spiritual purity. And also, it is a profound connection to both the ancestors and the natural world. As a tradition that transcends time, it has continued to hold a deep significance in our contemporary Igbo society, offering a glimpse into the enduring spiritual and cultural values of the Igbo people. Now, let's do a quick recap. The significance of removing our shoes, first of all, comes from purity and cleanliness. It shows that your intent, your intentions towards coming to this shrine, it is pure, and you are spiritually and physically clean. The next one is humility and respect. That is to show that you are aware of where you're coming to, or where you're about to venture into. It is not your usual playground, it is not your office, it is not your marketplace, but it is a place of extreme power. It is a place that holds spiritual significance and value. Now, the third one is the connection to Anna or Ajani that this practice or act provides. It provides to us that we have a connection to the earth. And we can remember that even before we began to wear footwear, our ancestors were walking around barefooted. They were walking around barefooted, and we don't have to imagine how we were able to bring in that knowledge into our interpretations of our culture. So it's because that we understand the connection of Tuajane that is being shared between human and human, and spirit, or spirit to human. We understand that connection to Ajane, and we know that Ajane is the custodian of morality, of ancestry, of lineage. So we try to honor, to respect, to show her significance, her value to us by the simple gesture of removing our footwears. Now, the fourth one is the symbolic meaning of leaving worldly concerns behind, and also participating in traditional rituals that are taking places within the sacred groves or shrines. So these few points that I've listed out is the things that made up the significance of removing our shoes while we are about to enter an ancestral Igbo shrine. And I hope it makes a lot of sense. Let's answer these questions. Why do we have this practice, and why this practice exists? So if you have any questions, don't forget to drop them. I'm going to check out your questions, and until next time, yeah guys, yeah.